and welcome to another edition of Trade Talk TV. Today we have Shevlin from Iponweb in the office. Shane, thanks for coming in today.
Very welcome, Kieran. Good to be here.
And today we'll talk about the DMP. So if we can say that 2006 to 2012 was the year of the mobile, 2013 was the year of the DMP. And today we're just going to break it down. There's been a lot written about the DMP on various publications, DigiDay and AdExchange and a few others. But today we're going to break it down here on the whiteboard. What exactly is a DMP, and talk about the use cases of this piece of technology. And Shane's going to talk a little bit more about Iponweb, and obviously they have built a lot of this technology for some of their clients. So Shane, just give us a sort of overview of what Iponweb do, and we'll just jump straight into the whole talk about DMP.
Sure. So Iponweb are a technology company. We primarily build media trading platforms and customized versions of what you probably would call a DSP, an SSP, and everything in between. Really, that's our bag specifically. Interesting comment on 2013 from you being the year of the DMP. I think we would probably go along with that in the sense that we probably received more requests from folks asking to build some type of data management or audience management platform, or at least complement an existing technology stack, a media trading stack that was in market already, with some component which allowed them to leverage their audience in some way.
Okay, so before we go to talk about the three use cases you see a DMP being sort of used in, let's just discuss exactly how you perceived a data management platform or a data warehouse solution. So effectively, you could just sort of maybe map out, have you got a pen there?
Yeah.
You map out maybe what a sort of an overview of what exactly it looks like, just a general sort of schematic.
Yeah, so I mean, for us, I mean, the term DMP, we probably consider there to be several subcategories within the general blanket sort of moniker of data management platform.
Yeah.
You're typically sort of dealing with three primary components.
Okay.
You've got either high performance database component, which is usually what's required for some kind of real-time lookup if you're involved in media trading, whether that's selling ad impressions or buying ad impressions. Additionally then, for more sort of, if you like, traditional DMP type technology, you need some kind of distributed database component, which actually is sort of hosting the data, particularly when you consider larger scale. So you know, a data warehouse in the cloud type solution. Yeah. And then you sort of particularly again, if you're trading media, you need some kind of component which can sort of actively query this data set and the brains of the system in essence.
So this is sort of like your store, effectively, your database, so like Mongo or whatever you're using as your database solution. But the logic, computational power is down here, where you actually manage, activate, slice, dice data, and obviously use it for either targeting or storing information on particular users. This is where it actually takes place. So is this down at the DSP level, or how does it usually work?
Yeah, so I mean the piece of let's call it a media trading stack, which is leveraging either data or audience data more specifically, is, you know, a collection of cores essentially. It's a server component, web serving component, which ultimately uses the data stored in one of these database components to make an intelligent decision about media buying, injecting real-time data into a media buying decision based on a user, whether it's user history, you know, custom data which you've collected perhaps offline, and so on.
And is it managed from this point, or do you usually have a UI in this part here, or how does it usually work?
Well, again, that depends on your definition of DMP. And sort of within our sort of view of the DMP world or audience platform world, we would probably categorize the solutions that we built historically, at least, into 3 or 4 different types.
Okay, so let's talk about those 3 types. Let's talk about the first type. It's sort of your basic but fairly functional piece of technology, which is the sort of the first case of the DMP. So explain to me what that is, what it looks like, and typically who uses it.
Sure. So I mean, the first sort of let's move over here, perhaps. The first sort of type of DMP or audience management platform is one where the primary objective is to trade the data stored in the platform itself, rather than trade media and use the data to leverage to trade the media in a specific way. And so that type of platform, let's call it a standalone DMP, perhaps. We would typically look to build that type of platform and support sort of standard segment creation. In inverted commas, standard meaning sort of tracking the fact that a user has done a simple thing, has been on a site for a given amount of time, and so on.
So this be used potentially by publishers, or maybe people who are data, sort of, as you said, are just basically trading data as opposed to media.
So I mean, the data needs to come from somewhere. So typically it will come from publishers, or it will come from a source which the operating entity has sort of partnered with to lay their hands on that data. It's typically traded on DSPs. So there's a significant sort of undertaking in terms of integrating this type of solution with existing DSP technology in market today.
Would you say this is kind of used by a lot of third-party data traders, hooking into the DSPs and buying their segments effectively?
Yes, that's the typical use case, I would say, for a, again, standalone DMP. So, I mean, in terms of sort of building and running this type of solution, we would look typically to operate something like this for in the region of between 15 and 30,000 pounds on a monthly basis.
Ooh, pricey.
Yes, it is. But again, the range is pretty wide there, given that it just completely depends on the computational power required to compute the segments that you're interested in trading. So if you have many segments, and they're sort of slightly more complex than a basic sort of users were on this site, then your costs are going to escalate pretty quickly. All right,
so that's the first use case. So let's talk about the second use case, which is basically the solution part of a greater stack. So can you talk a little bit about that? It's a sort of in the stack sort of process.
So the second use case that we would have identified a few times in the past has been where somebody will come to us with an existing ad serving solution, some kind of media trading solution in play already, whether it's RTB enabled or not, and they need to begin sort of leveraging data within that solution, if that makes sense. So they have, for example, an ad serving component, they have primary tag functionality, and so they almost inadvertently collect data already. They just need the sort of high or low grade database components in order to store that data, and potentially some custom logic in order to execute whatever it is they intend to do with the data.
So it's basically existing players that may have DSP or bit of functionality, but looking for that extra layer of intelligence to enter, activate and process data, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So you're looking at more sort of custom behavioral segments,
right? And
so you could sort of call this a just running out of space here, a sort of a behavioral targeting type data platform, or something along those lines. Again, making sort of the names up as I go along here, because typically this functionality set will be very different depending on who we're speaking to. So, I mean, a good example of the type of functionality that would be sort of needed in here is something like identifying within the existing network that this technology solution already exists, operates in, identifying, say, 10,000 sites which you serve ads into every day or you hit in some way with pixels, and sort of defining custom segments around women, men, sports enthusiasts across 10,000 domains, for example, and building these sort of more robust segments which enable you to then trade media, sort of many millions of pounds or dollars of media across a few dozen segments. So very strong and indicative segments.
Yeah. And sort of moving on from that, then the third of that particular category of use case is what we loosely would talk about as the enterprise solution, which is quite a bigger sort of project in terms of managing, storing data effectively.
Yeah, maybe just one final point on the second category, which is that the focus usually with this type of solution is to run this thing at a fairly low cost.
Okay.
Given that they're already pretty high overheads with an ad serving solution, whatever, or a bidder or whatever might already exist. And so, to run something like this, we're looking at sort of under £5,000 or £6,000 a month.
That's much more agreeable than £30,000 a month.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah, I think I'll buy that solution. And sort of the final solution, we're talking about top tier advertisers. I mean, let's talk about the enterprise DMP effectively.
So again, the consideration here is, do you have a very specific use case or business model which you are pretty sure, given the effort required to build a fully fledged enterprise audience management platform, let's call it that, are you fairly convinced in your ability to drive significant revenues from this platform? If the answer is yes, then potentially the price tag for something like this may not scare you too much. But if you're looking at a fully fledged enterprise solution which is dealing in multi-countrywide data, so hundreds of millions of users, and many tens of thousands of segments.
And where would those segments become? It's not can't like for something like this. It can't all just be cookie information. We're talking about cookie data. It must be offline, other sources of data as well. Is that the sort of premise behind this?
Yeah. So we've built enterprise solutions which are dealing in online data specifically.
Yeah.
So data which already exists against cookies somewhere, whatever type of metadata that is. And then we have sort of built systems which are effectively built for the very purpose of bringing data to cookies, which usually means some kind of migration from offline to online. Whether that's
CRM, whatever.
Yeah, hashing email addresses, bringing it from CRM data, and so on.
And so typically, who would sort of use an enterprise? I mean, I think it's an expensive piece of kit. So who are we talking about here? We're talking about top 10 advertisers in the world, top big agencies, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, so if you are investing, and again, price tag for something like this to run, just to actually keep the thing alive, is in the region of 50k to 100k monthly. Right. Because you are literally talking about sort of potentially many hundreds of web serving components, of boxes, of cores to actually compute for example, running reports which you expect to get sort of responses from in minutes on very complex combinations of segments and user behavior around recency, around sort of combination of viewed impressions, clicks, pixel events, and bringing that data back in sort of seconds and minutes as opposed to hours. That's heavy computational power requirement.
So big cost then.
Yeah, it's all about hardware.
Right. And I mean, something like this obviously is the core of a lot of businesses, because they're using it to manage data, but also not just to kind of push people down the funnel. There's a lot more sort of customer relationship going on, almost like the life cycle of the customer effectively. So I mean, all these parts of data are sorted. So is this going to be an integral part of a lot of big big advertisers tech stack effectively?
Yeah, so when you talk about specifically, I would say offline data, so data which is not currently available in real time against a user ID somewhere, whether it's mobile or display, that's where you're sort of getting into the really clever stuff. So you know, using intelligence that you store against user X based on their buying history, based on their intent data, based on a whole bunch of stuff that is potentially very, very useful when it comes to leveraging a real-time, leveraging sort of intelligence in a real-time environment.
Okay.
Yeah, so to come back to your question specifically, I think you need to have access to this data, whether that's your own data, whether it's data that you've acquired through partnerships, and you need to have a fairly sophisticated operational team, I would say, to make good use of this.
Okay. And do you see that this continuing to be a big trend this year in 2014?
I think it will be. I mean, RTB has definitely, and programmatic generally, has matured somewhat in the last 12 to 24 months. I think the time for establishing which technology is useful to your business has come and gone. I think the more sort of opportunistic traders of programmatic media out there will begin seriously, I think, to think about leveraging audience data and data generally in 2014 for sure.
Hence the rush into the space. Shane, thanks very much for doing that breakdown for us today. It was really, really interesting. And for the record, I don't think it's a platform at all. It's a nice piece of technology. But thanks, Shane, for coming in today and running through some use cases and also what exactly technology does. So that was Trader Talk TV, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.